Thanks, folks, for taking time. We'll give everybody just a minute here, or 30 seconds for audios to connect up to the Zoom systems here as we're logging in. I want to say thank you, first of all, for taking time on what I'm sure is a busy day in government these days. Every day is extremely busy. Every day is extremely important, and every day brings a new set of problems with it. And that's why we're in this business, to address problems and work towards coming up with solutions. And that's what Gustavo Rodriguez is going to talk with us here today about. We're very honored, very pleased to have Gus with us here today. And I just want to say that, look, nobody really wants to talk about this stuff if you don't have to. But we have to. Every day we open up a web link or read a story about a cyber intrusion. And I read an article the other day that said that be ready during the holidays, as attacks will be prominent. And that's the best time to, quote unquote, gotcha. In the middle of a celebration during Hanukkah or Christmas or New Year's. So it's just so wonderful that you took the time. Obviously, you're on this call for a reason. Either you've had a recent cyber breach if you're in Delaware County, New York. We had a recent breach there. If you're in Suffolk County, New York, on this call, having a recent breach there. And there's others around the state that had cyber breaches and intrusions. So best to further educate yourself. And that's what exactly we're going to do today. And it's also my great privilege and honor to introduce the Honorable Steve Newhouse, the Orange County executive and also friend of Gus, who lives in Orange County. And so I'll turn it over to County Executive Steve Newhouse for introduction and opening remarks. County Executive Newhouse.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to all my colleagues out there. Welcome today. This is obviously a very important topic. I just finished a big meeting with my finance commissioner and a bunch of banks that we do business with, talking about how we can protect our assets. They're continuing to see a huge increase now in check fraud. Like the Catch Me If You Can has made a major comeback with the technologies out there. So I met Gus about 6 months to 9 months ago. I was asked to attend a luncheon, and I reluctantly went to one of the many things to get invited to. I sat down, they introduced this guy, Gus, and he blew me away. While I'm at this luncheon, I was texting department heads from emergency management in particular, get over here to this restaurant. You got to hear this guy's presentation. Just phenomenal, important stuff. I'm going to read just a little bit of how we got here very quickly, because I'm going to shut up and let you guys hear the main guy here, and he knows what's going on. But a couple of years ago, NYSEC was asked by the board of directors, as well as the county executives and the county administrators, to build a cybersecurity portfolio to help out our members face one of the most pressing threats that we see here in our industry. In response to the cybersecurity primer for local leaders, cybersecurity insurance challenges facing public entities, and cybersecurity tabletop exercises were put together for our local governments. These reports are now available and they're on our website. We also have a growing series of recorded cybersecurity webinars designed to foster greater awareness. Some of you know about this. If you don't, ask Mark, ask Steve Aquario, ask myself. We'll show you where you can get some of these tabletops. From multi-factor authentication and endpoint detection and recovery and backup systems, we have all sorts of insurance professionals, federal cybersecurity experts, election system officials, and State Division of Homeland Security all plugged in with us on this. These recordings, again, are available on our NYSAC YouTube channel. Last year, around this time, Suffolk County gave us a lessons learned from their breach. There isn't a cyber conversation where Suffolk County is not brought up because of the level of damage that was done by their attack. So even with these resources and lessons learned, we know that we have threats out there. Our own Delaware County is the latest of our members who had a cyber event. That brings us to where we are today. We have Lieutenant Gus Rodriguez. I know Gustavo is his name. I call him Gus. He's a friend of mine. Retired member of NYPD Intelligence Bureau. He is one of the pioneers that developed the New York City Cyber Command. In 2009, he was sent by NYPD to the Center of Homeland Defense and Security courses at the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, our nation's best. In 2013, Lieutenant Rodriguez embarked on a fellowship at the FBI National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force in Washington, D.C. In 2015, he joined the FBI New York Cyber Task Force, leveraging his experience to identify, pursue, and prosecute cyber criminals worldwide. As a special deputy U.S. Marshal, he led the NYPD's cyber terrorism squad, focusing on critical infrastructure protection in collaboration with our federal, state, local authorities, as well as the private sector. This guy is what we call a cybersecurity evangelist, and it's just a phenomenal guy. I cannot speak more about him. I'm happy that he calls Orange County home. And with that, Gus, tell my partners what's going on and what they need to be aware of and how they can protect themselves.
Wow, how do I follow that? I'm gonna give him a handshake. I'm gonna give him a hand from here. Thank you so much, sir. And I wanna thank County Executive Newhouse for having me here today. I wanna thank Steve Aquario. I wanna thank Mark Levine, Louis Montez, the whole team there to actually put this together, because at the end of the day, over the last 24 years, wherever I'm presenting, I am so excited to be doing it at the local level. I'll get into the background as I transition into slides and cue them up. But what I wanna do is whenever I'm speaking somewhere, I know folks want to know who's talking to them. So again, Gus Rodriguez just retired last year from the NYPD after 24 years of service, born and raised in the South Bronx. Mom wanted 3 cardiologists and she got 3 New York City cops. And again, I started in the again, raised on 138th Street. I started my career in the 41st precinct in the South Bronx. So just again, an amazing time to come on in policing. 3 years after that, the world changed for all of us. The world changed as I go to that third slide. The world changed for all. This is my desk at home. This is when we responded to Ground Zero. We were there for 8 months digging and standing guard. And at Ground Zero, that's where I knew what preparing to fail and failing to prepare looks like. And that's why that helmet that I wore at Ground Zero sits on my desk at home here in Orange County to remind myself and to remind everyone around me in the cybersecurity realm why we do what we do. So again, you're going to hear me say this a lot during this presentation. Cybersecurity is public safety. Cybersecurity is national security. And when you're talking about the cyber attacks we're facing, 14 years after that day that we responded is when, because of that day, New York City knew what asymmetric threats really look like. And we identified cyber as being one of them. Obviously, 10 years ago this month, during Thanksgiving, and I'll get into that with some of that chronology. After 9/11, I wanted to go to Intel and counterterrorism. After I got lucky, after a couple promotions from sergeant to lieutenant, I got into Intel. And that's when I got even more lucky after the first master's in public administration at Marist. I was lucky, as the county executive just said, to be sent out to the Naval Postgraduate School and sit there for 2 years and do a master's in Homeland Security. From responding that day and from being in policing for the last 24 years, I knew that we have 800,000 cops in America and 18,000 police departments. And the challenge has always been communication. But Steve Aquario, County Executive Newhouse, and Mark Levine are fighting that right now with this webinar right now. The last thing that cyber terrorists want me to tell you today is what I'm about to tell you in the next 29 slides. They don't want us speaking like this. They don't want us sharing information. They want us operating in silos. From forward, I write a thesis called Domestopol. Like I said, 800,000 cops in America, 18,000 police departments. I come back home, I get lucky, graduate from the Naval Postgraduate School. I get a thesis award for Domestopol. And from 2011 to 13, after that day that we wore those hats, after that day, the NYPD said, we want to have officers overseas. I get lucky, I get sent to Singapore. So my post went from the South Bronx, 1 block on Kelly and Southern Boulevard, and it went to 16 countries in Singapore, covering from Tokyo to Sydney, Sri Lanka to Manila. NYPD wanted to know what was going on the other side of the world, and they wanted to know before the New York Times told them to protect America's largest city. That's what I did for 2 years. Every day I was on a plane, 1 day to Manila, 1 day to Bangkok, 1 day to Kuala Lumpur, 1 day to Tokyo, building relationships, building trust, letting those police forces know that we need information in real time, signing an MOU with the Philippine National Police. That's where I cut my teeth on building partnerships. From forward, I come back, and I'll stop right there because when the plane lands back here in JFK, and my wife and daughter come back with me, they were out there for 2 years. Plane lands and the phone rings, and the NYPD says, "Hey Gus, good job. In Singapore, we want to know if you want to go down to the FBI National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, and we want an officer from the NYPD to learn what they're doing." I'll stick there for a second. That's when I went from having one ID, which says Lieutenant NYPD, after raising my hand up in 1998 and taking an oath to the NYPD, to taking another oath with the FBI, and as the county executive said, becoming a special deputy United States Marshal, U.S. Marshal, and actually entering into the National Cyber Investigative Joint Task Force, where all 18 agencies in the intelligence community collaborate and share information on how to protect America's critical infrastructure. I'll stop right there because I'm gonna go into chronology in a couple slides, but when we start these presentations, we have to talk about what Steve just talked about. So what's the problem? What are we talking about here? What's the problem before we get to the solution? And when I talk about cyber attacks, I have to wait, County Executive Newhouse, before the presentation, because these things are happening so prolifically that they're happening every single day. When I'm talking about every single day, I'm talking about when we were having leftovers this weekend, this Thanksgiving weekend. This on the left was happening 366 miles away from where I'm sitting in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. A water authority was hit by a cyber attack from an Iranian group of perpetrators who took out a piece of equipment that allows them to measure water. So we call it a PLC, we call it a human machine interface, we call it perps turning that off, and that county, one of 3,143 counties in the country, had to go to manual operation that day on Saturday. So I welcome all folks on this call, again, local municipalities. This type of attack, again, like Stephen just said, it happens on a Thanksgiving weekend. Who's going to respond to this within the first 3 minutes? It's local officials, like they did. And I welcome all county executives on this phone call and everyone all teams on this phone call to ask themselves, so if the counties are going to get hit with this, we have to be prepared not only to prevent it, but we have to be prepared to respond to it. Because everyone is going to get hit. And Superman is not coming. Everyone is going to get hit with something like this, and we have to be prepared. On the right side, on the left side of the screen is 2/6 November, Saturday. On the right side of the screen, thank you for the folks at DHS CISA. Thank you for Director Easterly. Thank you for the FBI Cyber Division and all of those folks in the IC who put the product on the right together on 2/8 November. I read it. It comes out, I see it on my email at 8:31 p.m. and I send it out at 8:32 p.m. because that's the information that the 52,000 water utilities in the country have to have forthwith. But not just the water utilities, everyone needs to have this type of information. But again, on the same weekend, this happens. So when you have ERs in the country, multiple ERs being affected by a ransomware attack. Ardent is the firm from the open source that was affected. Again, Steve Accardio, it's happening on a Thanksgiving weekend when everyone is enjoying the holiday and everyone is traveling. And what gets all of us about this is when you start diverting ambulances from hospitals in America because the ER does not have their systems up to be able to take care of someone who's having a heart attack or someone who needs to see a doctor forthwith. That's a problem. That's a problem. And this happened. So again, I'm not talking about 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. I'll get there. But this happened this week as we're speaking right now. In these hospitals right now, some of them in Montclair, New Jersey, 2 of them in Montclair, East Texas, New Mexico, were the ones who were hit. And as I'm speaking right now at 2:19 in the afternoon, my question is, I'm not on Google right now, Googling cyber attack, but someone else is being hit. Front forward, we'll stick on this problem. Long Beach, California, city that declares a state of cyber emergency. Date on this one, I'm still in the same 28-day period, November 19th. This just happened. And again, those officials, whether you're from a village, a town, a county, a state, local officials are gonna be the ones that are gonna be in front of those cameras explaining what we know and what we don't know, what we're doing about it, and do we have a cyber team sitting around a table, a human cyber team, that's one, trying to prevent and trying to respond in real time. I'll say it and I'll say it again. The goal of this is, and again, I woke up this morning and I'm saying to myself, the goal as we evolve here is 62 counties in the state of New York, 3,143 in America. The day that every local municipality has their own version, doesn't have to be the $107 billion budget that New York City has. They're not 120 agencies like New York City has, not 44 agencies like LA has, but their own version of Cyber Command, a place where we prevent and we respond, a place where we make sure our agencies are sharing, training, and responding together. The day that happens, I'm gonna stop sharing this story, but it hasn't happened yet. Moving forward, I'm still in the same 28-day period. Ulster County, New York, Kingston, New York, October 20th. 2 hospitals in Kingston had to divert ambulances not even a month ago. And again, I'm reading this, I'm processing this. You know, we have fire departments, we have police departments, we have EMS that respond to emergencies, but when this happens in the cyber realm, we need the same type of capabilities. And I'll keep repeating, New York City is not perfect. New York City is not, no municipality is perfect. But we recognized 10 years ago this month that we had to do something independent of everyone, independent of the of state, independent of federal agencies, but we have to work together with state and federal agencies. But again, local municipalities are going to be there within 3 minutes dealing with this. As I move forward, County Executive Newhouse spoke about this, and Steve Accardio, you just spoke about this. So now we're getting farther back into September 2022. And I did not, you know, I talk to my wife all the time. My wife is the one that says, hey, you want to go to Singapore? Let's go. Hey, they want me to go down to FBI, NCI, JTF. Gus, you'll be an idiot if you don't do that. 2 days ago, she said, Gustavo, you really, I hear you speaking about this for the last 10 years, but you really have to start speaking about the money that's being spent. So why does it matter? Why does it matter to local officials? Again, I didn't go to the Wharton School of Business, but in that 3rd paragraph, I read that Suffolk County spent $5.4 million on the investigation piece and $12 million for new hardware and software. $17.4 million out of a county's budget. That's significant. That's significant. That's money that could go somewhere else. That's money that could go to other programs. But this is what Suffolk County had to deal with. This is what those digital first responders in Suffolk had to deal with. And what also gets me is the crew that took responsibility for this is Black Cat. You might have heard of Black Cat recently, Alpha in the news. They're the same crew that took out MGM casinos. MGM, $130 billion company, had to pay $100 million because of that. What gets me about this slide as well, and only because I know, is being at the FBI Cyber Task Force, what we do and what we train to do is that we follow cyber crime scenes worldwide, nationwide and locally. That's our job. In the physical world, I remember responding to burglaries. I remember responding to robberies and assaults, and I remember responding to ground zero, all crime scenes. There's no difference in the cyber realm. Cyber crime scenes like this are happening all the time. And what we train to do at NYC Cyber Command and at FBI New York Cyber Task Force and at NYPD is I need to know yesterday what's the malware that hit Suffolk County. I need to know it forthwith. I need to know the vector. I need to know the TTPs because we have to take that information that hit Suffolk County, Black Cat, and we have to share it where we are to prevent something like that from happening where you are. What kills me about this slide again is the FBI shared a cyber alert in April of 2022, warning folks about Black Cat ransomware. So it kind of stabs you in the chest because you know the information is out there. The question is, do all 3,143 counties in America have their own version of Cyber Command to try to prevent that in the first place? Moving forward, now we're going back. Now we're going back to 2018 when the city of Atlanta gets hit with a cyber attack. And we were tracking this in real time, and we were also, again, this is a city now. This is an entire city. How much money did they pay? Open source reporting, $18 million. Same week, Baltimore, 911. You're talking about 911. I'll get into how many 911 calls NYPD responds to every day. But the worst thing you could do to a county or a village or a town or a state is stop those sector cars on that bottom right side of the screen from responding because their systems are not working. Their 911 systems are not working. Texas, entire states are being hit. Don't ask me how I remember. I was on my deck on a Friday night at 1 o'clock in the morning, finishing up work when this one came over the wire. And then, of course, we don't sleep, right? We don't sleep at NYPD. We don't sleep in Orange County. The county executives team doesn't sleep. Their job is to make sure public safety is intact. And we didn't sleep until 1 o'clock in the afternoon that Saturday until someone told me what the malware was and what the vector was and how they got in. And then that's when we shared it with New York City's 120 agencies. And that's when we shared it with the private sector in New York City. And that's Homeland Security. When you get a roger that on that email, thank you, Gus Rodriguez, we are looking in our system for the malware. We are protecting ourselves from those IOCs, from those malware signatures. That's when you put the phone down and that's when you can have a weekend. Moving forward, this is what's at stake. This screen is what's at stake. So again, for those county officials in New York and all county officials looking at this slide right here and at this presentation, I invite you to plug your own number into our numbers, New York City numbers. NYPD responds. These numbers are circa 2019, 2020, 25,000 911 calls a day in the city of New York. You want to punch the NYPD in the face? That's how you do it. God forbid. 11.6 million annually. That's what we are protecting against. 1.1 billion gallons of water flow into the city of New York every day. And my partner and friend, CIO Michael Shum, is on this call right now. Sorry, Mike, I had to blow you up, but it makes me proud that I met Michael 2016, 2019 to have this exact same conversation. And I'll get into that in a few slides. New York City has 13,000 traffic lights. It doesn't matter how many sirens and how many lights you have on your Tahoe or your Ford Interceptor or your fire truck. If the traffic lights in New York City don't work, that's a problem. That's what we were protecting. 8.5 million residents, 120 agencies. We have 52,000 employees with the NYPD, 320,000 employees in the entire city of New York, and everyone has a device. 3,200 power companies. I'm going out nationally. And it's interesting. I keep that slide at the bottom, that bullet. 52,000 drinking water and 16,000 wastewater systems nationwide, as what just happened in Arequipa happened this weekend. So this is what we were thinking: 1,700 sectors of critical infrastructure, and we knew at NYPD that 90% of everything I just said is owned and operated by the private sector. So where is that collaboration happening as far as, are we sharing information in real time? And it really does take, bringing it up 50,000 feet and thinking about, if you're in finance and you're the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, protecting someone like JP Morgan Chase with a $500 million budget. Last night I was on a call, and we all know that if you're in finance, that those type of resources, we don't see those in healthcare. We don't see those in municipalities, but we have the technology and we have the know-how to be able to look at this asymmetric problem that I'm talking about right now, and know that an Iranian-backed group Saturday hit a water supply 366 miles away from here. How do we think out of the box and start saying to ourselves, we really need to be helping each other out here? Someone has to think differently, but that's where Cyber Command comes into play. And here we go into the response. You know, I can't have a presentation where we keep talking about problems and we're not talking about solutions, as I see the clock running here. But my former boss, Deputy Commissioner John Miller, once said, intelligence is being able to understand problems. And really good intelligence is being able to do something about those problems. I think about that in three buckets. There's folks that don't even know that there's a problem, right? And then you have the folks that have that intelligence to know that cybersecurity is a problem. But the third one is where it gets special. The third one is where the magic happens. And the reason I have that slide before this slide, I'll take that back. Before this slide, I'll go back to chronology in a second, is because that's when it happens for us, this day, January 23rd, 2015. That's the day that I came home back. Now I'm skipping back, coming home from Naval Postgraduate School. Now I'm in Singapore. Now I come back. I come home, unpack. Now I get in another car and go down to FBI Cyber Division. Come back from Cyber Division after being in that room with those federal agents and all members of the intelligence community for a year. And that's where I learned what bad folks are trying to do to our critical infrastructure. Now it's in my brain, and I come back home in 2014, and I'm lucky enough to work for the two folks right in the middle of that screen, Commissioner Bill Bratton and Deputy Commissioner John Miller, both retired now from the NYPD. One day they're walking down the hall at One Police Plaza, and John Miller and Police Commissioner Bratton are standing there, and I remember a gentleman, LAPD detective, who writes a thesis called Los Angeles Cyber Command. Again, he gets the thesis award at NPS. I'm in a hotel in Asia, and I hold on to that email. And now I come back home from FBI DC, and I say, you know what? How many times do I get an opportunity to go up to Police Commissioner Bill Bratton and say, hey, I want to show you this thesis award. And I say, Commissioner Bratton and Miller, do you know about Los Angeles Cyber Command? They look at me and say, no, I don't. And why don't we have that in New York City? And that's when we all start smiling. At 14:09 hours, 2:09 hours on January 23rd, 2015, the email goes out from Deputy Commissioner John Miller. I'm on the CC. It lands at LAPD. Gus Rodriguez told us you have a cyber command. Can you share that with us? Automatically, they shared that with us, and that collaboration starts. We get all the information from LA. We start custom making it to New York. We share it with the CIO at the time, Ann Rose in New York City. We share it with the mayor's office, share it with the entire One Police Plaza. That work takes 2 years. And in July of 2017, Mayor Bill de Blasio signs the executive order for Cyber Command. That's how that happened. One day before that happened, thank you, Ann Roast, retired CIO. I'm at a breakfast at Citibank talking about cyber threats. She grabs me and says, Gus, I want to introduce you to someone. We walk over to the next side of the room, and she says, Gus, we just hired the first CISO for New York City Cyber Command. His name is Jeff Brown. I say, hi, nice to meet you, Jeff. 2 months later, Colin, I don't know if you're on this call, Colin Ahern, number 2 at Cyber Command, now the Chief Cyber Officer for the state of New York. I meet Colin Ahern 2 months later. The history with that, again, I will always remember that moment, because it was a moment that we took the intelligence we had. We saw what happened on 9/11, and we said we have to prepare for things that we know are coming, but we need to do it now because we don't have a cyber command. Backing up to this, these bullets right here, I spoke about 10 years ago, this Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, I get on an Amtrak and it's snowing and I go down to FBI DC and I raise my right arm and I become a deputized special deputy with the FBI, and I learned what I learned at the NCIJTF. I spoke about January 2015. That's when Cyber Command came to New York City. The same month, Police Commissioner Bryan says to me, "Okay, we're doing that, Gus. Great. Are you still deputized? And if you are, I'm happy that you're working in my office, but you need to go back to 26 Federal Plaza to the 22nd floor at the FBI New York Cyber Task Force." And that's what I did. That's when it happened, November 2015. I spoke about I spoke about Michael Shum earlier, and I'm sorry, Mike, but I really have to highlight that collaboration. Doesn't matter if you're trying to prevent cyber attacks. It doesn't matter if you're responding to them, but you have to be proactive about these vulnerability assessments. So you look at that fourth bullet and you say, okay, I'm here now. And I knew what our mission was, Steve. And I knew what our mission was, County Executive Newhouse. I knew that if I'm the lieutenant commander in charge of a cyber terrorism squad at FBI New York, working in concert with my FBI counterparts, and we have all of these cases, these cyber terrorism cases. I have in one pocket, I have a shield that says City of New York. In the other pocket, I have an ID that says U.S. Marshal. But I know that what we're learning at the FBI Cyber Task Force, I know that whatever we could share with the 120 agencies in the City of New York, whatever we could share with public-private sector partners to prevent cyber attacks, I knew that that's our job. And the bad news about that bullet is I can't tell you how many things we stopped, but I know we did. From forward, I meet Michael Shum and Cecil McMaster at New York City DEP Valhalla. This is the place where the 1.1 billion gallons of water flows through that location, and it goes into the 5 boroughs every single day. When you stand there and you're listening to that water flow, it's the sound of life. It was a room like this. One side it was DEP, one side it was NYPD FBI, and the DEP team is looking at us and saying, why are they here? This same presentation I give to them, and I said, we're pursuing cases at FBI New York, but in the meantime, while we're pursuing those cases and identifying the threat actors, we have to share things with you in real time. And I'll stop right there. That was one of the things NYPD did. So for all the 18,000 police departments in this country, if you're not attached to that FBI Cyber Task Force right now, it's something that worked for us. Because again, you have local cops embedded with federal agents. We're not picking up a phone to call the FBI. We're sitting with the FBI, and we're expressing to the FBI Cyber Division, please share what you have with us so we could stop things in real time. And you know what? They did. So that's the same thing we did with our water folks, and it works. From forward, New York City Cyber Critical Services and Infrastructure Working Group. Here we go again. Private sector in New York. Now we're not talking about the public sector, but everyone on this call has private sector folks where they are. They have the banks. They have hospitals that are private. They have all types of critical infrastructure that operate all of those enterprises. We invited all of them in to NYPD Intel the same month that we launched New York City Cyber Command. We sat in a room like this downtown in NYPD Intel, 100 people at the table, and before I started speaking, all of those CIOs started taking out their business cards and introducing themselves to each other. They never knew each other. So again, asymmetric. We gave them the same presentation. We told them what our mission was. We said, hey, JP Morgan, if you're seeing something in your enterprise, please share it with transportation. And transportation, the same. Whatever threat you're seeing, please, we all live in this city. We all use the critical infrastructure. What does it matter If you're a big bank protecting your enterprise and you walk out of the building in New York City and the trains don't work, well, there's 35 train lines, there's 13,000 traffic lights, there's 62 acute care hospitals. What does it matter if you're not sharing that information? It truly does matter. I'll get into that in a second. We talked about July 2017. I'll talk about real training, that second to last bullet. IBM, that was also part of that private sector meeting. And I'll talk about that in a second. This is where it started. I'll always cherish this picture because it really means true collaboration. And it means America's largest city sitting down and not only identifying the problem, but actually doing something about it. When I'm talking about cyber critical services and infrastructure working group, these are the folks I'm talking about. I'm talking about IBM, I'm talking about JP. All these people are in New York City. All these people are managing their own networks. They're seeing cyber threats in real time by the millisecond. What good is that if they're not sharing it with the folks that are trying to protect the critical infrastructure where their businesses operate? That's a best practice. That's a lesson learned. That's where we started CCSI. These are the sectors I keep talking about. How do we get all of the sectors in our counties, in our 62 counties, at a table like this? And how do we have, if we haven't had it, how do we have this meeting again with all of these folks and sit them down and say, hey, we have to think differently. Threat actors, the Iranians, the Russians, the North Koreans, Chinese threat actors, cartel, cyber, they don't want us collaborating like this. They don't want this. They don't want transportation sharing indicators of compromise with healthcare. But that's what we knew had to happen in New York City. That's what we knew, because it was human. So what was the mission as I get closer to the end here? What was the mission for New York City? Share, train, deploy in real time. What does it mean to share? What does it really mean to train? We could talk about private-public collaboration forever, but what I'm about to show you are true examples. And what I welcome everybody on this call to do is, are we doing this? And if you are, bravo to you. And if you're not, I am so excited to continue this conversation with all 62 county executives. And I'm excited to continue this conversation with the 3,143 in the country, because I truly believe this works. What does sharing mean? Give an example. It always happens on my daughter's birthday, 8th of May, 2021. Colonial Pipeline gets hit with a cyber attack. We all remember that. And it happens at 8 o'clock in the morning when we wake up. And it's significant. And I know Commissioner John Miller is gonna call me within 15 minutes. And this is how you prove that your relationship with the FBI Cyber Task Force means something. This is how you prove it right here, because now we need to know who hit the Colonial Pipeline. We need to know, we need to have indicators of compromise. I need to know what that cyber crime scene says yesterday. So I make calls, we make calls. And when we're sharing flashes and when we're sharing alerts, this is what I'm talking about. This is what everybody was talking about that day. Cyber attack forces a shutdown of a top US pipeline. White House gets rolled up, spun up. FBI gets spun up. All the IC, intelligence community agencies get spun up. And of course, the New York City cyber apparatus gets spun up. I make one call and I call, thank you, Rich Jacobs, the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge of the task force at that time, retired now. Before I ask a question, because we have such an amazing relationship, Rich Jacobs says, it's dark side. It's dark side, Gus. 10-4, Rich, that's all I need to know. I get my staff to get me IOCs, indicators of compromise related to dark side. We put that on a one-pager and we share that not only with New York City Cyber Command, but all 120 agencies in New York City and all private sector agencies. And 5 hours later, the New York Times prints this. That's true collaboration. That's real collaboration. And in 2020, the team that's there right now, these are the type of things we share. CISA alerts. Thank you, Director Easterly. FBI flashes. Thank you, Deputy Assistant Director, Director David Scott. FBI cyber pins. This is the same type of information that was posted at 8:31 PM this Wednesday about what happened in Pennsylvania. And what good is information if you don't have a team to share it with? And what good is information if there's so much noise in the cyber realm? But we're trained to know that when that DHS one comes out on Wednesday night, it has to do with Pennsylvania. So we jump on it and we share it. And we share with everyone that needs to protect a water facility. From forward, training. What does real training mean? Right? We talk about training. That day that we started CCSI, David Cass, if you're on the call, thank you so much. He comes up to me and he says, Gus, we have a cyber range in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it's a place where we bring Fortune 500 companies to train in cyber simulations. And I said to David Cass, what about a city? And David Cass said to me, we never did a city. And I said, David, please do a city. And what did we do? We took the entire cyber team on 5 December 2018, 26 July 2019, 6 December 2019. And we all went to the cyber range. We sat down in that room. The whole team was there, the door shut, and we started practicing on cyber attacks. Like the one that hit Texas that I was just talking about. Like the one that hit Louisiana when these states were calling cyber state of emergency. And what happened that day, County Executive Newhouse? The blood pressure went up. Everyone had 180 over 180, right? The beats per minute go up to 150. And you're sitting there and the phones are ringing. And we got a simulated scenario. Your power goes down, your lights are off, the hospitals aren't working. What are you doing? And local officials, as you're looking at the local officials right here, right in the middle, you see standing to my left at the time, my District Attorney Cy Vance. Thank you, District Attorney Cy Vance, for leading the way. We want to know. And this is going to happen all the time. When the cyber attack happens in Pennsylvania, those local officials are going to get in front of that camera. There's training cameras right in that room that we practice. How do you deliver? How do PIOs, how do Deputy Commissioners of Public Information and PIOs in this country deliver the message to the public in a confident way? And if you could tell the public, not only we have a cyber command, but we have law enforcement connectivity. We know what the malware is. We've been training for this. And this is what we know and this is what we don't know, but we're gonna get through this. Because if you're not preventing it, if you're responding to it confidently, and you're responding to it with a whole of government approach that you see in that screen, just like you do with hurricanes, just like you do with fires, just like you do with police emergencies, cyber is no different. This is right before, again, this is December 6, 2019. We did this training 3 times in 1 year. And bravo to IBM for showing us what real cyber public-private collaboration looks like. So I welcome the people on this phone call from local, state, and federal officials on this phone call. You know, we have to empower and enable local digital first responders, local officials to be able to deal with this problem I'm talking about at their level. That's a force multiplier. That's when you really have everyone sharing the cybersecurity responsibility. You know, right now we don't. Something interesting, and I give them a lot of credit. I give the gentleman on the video in Allakeepa, Pennsylvania, who's managing that water location. He went on camera and he said, bravo to him. I love his honesty. He said, I never thought this would happen to us. We're just a little water authority in Pennsylvania. So I want to talk to him. I want to do this presentation and help him and help that team and empower those local officials and enable those local officials to build their own cyber command. Here we go. Again, New York City, Department of Environmental Protection, and Michael Shum, again, on the call. He took this picture. We went down there and we did, like I spoke of before, we went there and said, We have to do a vulnerability assessment against our infrastructure. And in this picture, you have FBI, you have NYPD, you have DEP. This is after the meetings we had that day in that facility where the 1.1 billion gallons of water flow south of there. So again, you're talking about real vulnerability assessments, that's it. We're showing it to you right here. And New York City is not perfect, but this is where we have to be thinking. You know, we talk all day about what can we buy? What kind of firewall can we buy? Hey, talk to me about that software development lifecycle. Talk to me about identity and access management. Talk to me about the 8 domains in the CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional Manual. We need that. We need that. But what we also need is human beings standing next to each other and letting everyone know that we're here together. And if it happens, when it happens, we're gonna have that confident statement. We're gonna be in a better place to let everyone know that we're protecting ourselves. Two more slides. The last 10 years, thank God, went so well with what we were doing in New York City that in that last December the 6th, 2019, IBM Cyber Range simulation, our IBM says, hey Gus, this is an amazing thesis you have here, your team. New York City has an amazing thesis here. Bravo to NYPD, bravo to the agencies doing this type of proactive work. Can you go to the RSA Cyber Conference in San Francisco and share what I'm sharing right now in this call on 30 November with the cybersecurity professionals at the biggest cyber conference in the world? Of course I say yes. And the title, Lessons Learned from America's 2 largest city on preparing against cyber attacks, that's what the panel was. On that screen is me and the Chief Information Security Officer of LA. Front forward, 8 months ago in November, IBM calls me again. And I say to IBM, I'm sorry, IBM, I'm retired. And they say, I don't care that you're retired, Gus. Can you go back to RSA? This time, can you talk on a panel titled Under Pressure? What can cyber learn from first responders, right? What can cyber learn from folks that have been in the military? What can cyber folks learn from police and fire and EMS? That was it. And on that stage, to the right of me is an FDNY lieutenant. And to the right of him is an IBM professional that runs the cyber range right now. So again, when you're talking about blood pressure going up at the IBM cyber range, we have to start thinking about cybersecurity as they're not IT professionals. They're digital first responders. They're trying to protect lives. And when we change the nomenclature to that, when we change it to the nomenclature of digital first responders, then the discipline will get the respect it deserves, and it'll get the resources it deserves. And those digital first responders in Alaquipa, Pennsylvania, will get the resources they deserve to do those vulnerability assessments over there and really start preventing things. Because the bottom line, as we finish this presentation right now, this is not going away. And as we reach 2:52 p.m. on the East Coast, I will end the same way that I started. This is what guided us in New York City. This is why we did it. And, you know, we will not stop sharing this story. I think it's a beautiful story of what New York City did. I think it's a beautiful story of New York City Cyber Command. And I welcome any county executive. Thank you, sir, for letting me be here right now. But I welcome any county executive in New York that I don't know, or any in the nation that I don't know. I basically shrunk 10 years of New York City cyber strategies into 42 minutes. And it took us 2 years to create Cyber Command and bring all those folks into a location in New York City. I welcome this. I really, if you could reach out to Steve Aquario and Mark Levine, I'm here to continue to repeat this presentation until all 3,143 counties in America have their own custom-made version of Cyber Command. Again, I'll leave it at that, and thank you so much, County Executive Newhouse, for allowing me to do this from your office. And I'll basically stop sharing and go to the screen.
Thank you, Gus. And we were back to you, Mark and Steve.
You're back to me, Mark Levine at the New York State Association of Counties. Gus, the first question is, okay, this is a great story. What are your recommendations for the first 1, 2, 3 steps that a county can take to create this information sharing, this cyber command at the county level in any one of our counties or municipalities in New York?
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question, Mark. And the answer to that is like we did. The first step is identifying, if you haven't already, all chief information security officers in your county that manage those 17 sectors of critical infrastructure. Once you identify those individuals, invite them into your office. Invite them into your office and give them the threat briefing. Give them this threat briefing. Tell them that you want to think about this threat in an asymmetric fashion. And you tell them that you're owning it. Tell them that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility and it's public safety. Once you get all those people in a room and your agencies, right? And your agencies in your county. Again, New York City has over 100. How many agencies do you have in your county? Bring those CIOs in as well. Have that meeting. Tell them we're gonna all be in this together. That, Mark, is the first thing that has to happen. And when it happens, that's when you start telling them, we're gonna share together, we're gonna train together, and we're gonna respond together. And that's when those call outs to the state, that's when those call outs to the 202 area code, the federal government goes out. And that's when you start saying, hey, we're gonna start our own version of Cyber Command. How can you help with resources? I hope that answered the question, Mark, but that's the first step.
That's great. Great answer. Yes. So before I get to the questions in the chat, I want to invite anybody who's on the line now. If you have a question, we have an expert in the field right now. Fire off some questions in the chat or raise your hand. Next question. How does AI affect this? What's different now, better or worse, in cyber command practices now that AI is becoming so pervasive?
That's a great question, and a friend, Robert Brown, in charge of IT for the FBI, put out a really interesting note yesterday on LinkedIn, and basically said the FBI just finished a review and an analysis of how do we incorporate AI circa 2023 November into the environment while to help us, but while also making sure that we're following best practices. The way I look at it, AI, one of the RSA panels that I sat on in between those two physical panels was an AI panel. The way I look at AI is if we're looking at that software, that entire software development lifecycle of whatever AI you're using, if it's in a clean room that you're developing it or not, you have to make sure that the code that's being sold to you is safe and is not gonna corrupt or is not gonna misguide you. The reason I lean towards AI, Mark, is on Thanksgiving weekends at 2 o'clock in the morning, when your firewall or your EDR is monitoring for threats and is doing it without you using AI. You want to make sure that that endpoint detection and response is not just identifying the threat, Mark, but is actually doing something about the threat while everyone is possibly sleeping. So it's a balance. It's a balance, Mark. But I really do welcome everybody to look at that new report from the FBI Cyber Division on appropriate and safe uses of AI. Thank you, Grant Riggs.
You're muted, Mark.
Thank you, Gus. This is fantastic. You bring so much energy to this topic. We appreciate it. We appreciate everything you've done. I'm not seeing any more questions from the panel.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Hey, Mark. So one thing I have for you, Gus, you said in April of 2021, or whenever it happened to Suffolk County, the FBI put out a warning for Black Hat, which is the one who ultimately compromised Suffolk County. Is that like a forward on to everybody? Is that something that a cyber, whether you're, because you have small counties on here, you got counties with like 40, 50,000 people, you have counties with over 1 million on them. So they might have a cyber group of a few handful, or maybe a dozen, or maybe more. Is this a weekly meeting? Like, okay, Gus, you're my guy on threats. What do we got from the FBI this week?
Yes.
That's what was missed?
I'll tell you, it's a two-sided question, but that's an excellent question. So I'll start with the first, and I'll go into the weekly cyber brief.
Okay.
So the first is, again, we're sitting at an FBI cyber task force, and we are seeing these threats in real time, full stop. We know, again, there's a lot of noise in cyber. There's a lot of reports in cyber, but if you have a dedicated group of people that are not only do they have their own local cyber command, but they have their law enforcement here collaborating with the FBI as well, and they have their private sector group here, we're all gonna know what to be looking for. And the only reason I know is because of the last 10 years. I know about these cyber alerts that are coming out. And once you see it, Black Cat, it just sticks to your brain. You know it's April 2022, and I have a chronological head. So full stop on that. That alert, when it comes out, and I was sitting at my office at FBI Cyber, I stop, I read it, I take that alert, and I email it to the citywide distribution, all 120 agencies. I email it to the private sector. I email it to everyone who's in the New York City team. And if we're emailing something, it's important, right? It's important. And they look at, all right, what are the IOCs with Black Hat? What are the malware signatures? So full stop, shared already. Try to prevent it. On the other side of it, now, great point. Deputy Commissioner John Miller, and Chief Thomas Galati and NYPD, we always had our morning briefing. Every single morning at NYPD. We're talking about crime, we're talking about CT, counterterrorism, and then Gus is sitting right there, and he says the same exact thing. Gus, what do you got? What's new? Tell me about the latest cybercrime scene. How did it happen? Why did it happen? Are we protected against it? And for 10 years of doing that, you don't have to be a cyber person, but if you're having a morning brief every other morning, your acumen in cyber increases from whether you're the federal government, the state government, a small county in New York State, or you're New York City. But that was our learning curve. So again, being attached with law enforcement, knowing what's happening in real time, having a New York City Cyber Command, knowing when those alerts come out. And again, of course, Mark, it sticks to my brain, and then I see Suffolk County get hit with Black Cat. And then sticks to my brain some more, and then I see MGM get hit with Black Cat. It keeps repeating itself. So that's why we, as local government officials, have to have our own version. Doesn't have to be $107 billion New York City version of it. It could be your custom version, but sorry for that long answer.
No, I thought it was great.
Great job, Gus. Thank you very much. Adding to the great portfolio of webinars, and thanks for your offer to continue this conversation with us and with our members. So I want to take this time to really thank you, thank County Executive Steve Newhouse for hosting, and thanks for offering to help us.
Always. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And again, you're right. The conversation doesn't stop. We need all 3,143 counties to be in a better place. Thank you.
Thank you.